Welcome back. The trade in leather and the leather products in the East African community has enormous potential to boost the trade among EAC member states. Today, discussing how the sector is poised for growth, we are joined by the Director for the Center for Business Innovation and Training, as well as team leader in projects, Ms. Beatrice Mwasi. Beatrice, good morning.
Good morning to you, and thank you for having me this morning.
Happy to have you around. Let's get into my conversation, Beatrice. Now, the East African Community Leather Industry Network platform was launched April this year. Can you give us more insight on this and what its intended purpose is, Beatrice?
Yeah, thank you very much. The Leather Industry Network Platform, in short, we call it LIN platform.
Yes.
LIN, standing for Leather Industry Network. This is an inaugural platform for leather stakeholders in the region to be able to interact, connect, and transact business. It is the very first time that the leather, industry stakeholders across the region are coming together. Ever since the ratification of EAC community, of course, see, the intent was that so that we can facilitate trade among member communities, but we largely lack vehicles that enable the private sector to interact so that they're able to do business. So this particular platform, which is a digital platform, so it is a virtual space, very reliable virtual space where the leather community within the EAC is able to meet and then therefore be able to transact business. So now what are they able to do? So what we've decided to do is to be able to profile the entire leather community across the region and present them on the platform. So anybody looking out to interact with the leather community, the business community, and be able to do business with them, they'll be able to find them on the platform. And we're talking about not only people within the community looking for each other, we're talking about the global business community intending to transact business with the region in matters leather. They'll be able to find them on the platform. The second thing that the platform provides is information. We have a resource center. As it is today, it's difficult for anybody looking out for information and data on the regional leather sector to find it stationed anywhere. So, and we realized data is very important. Information is very important to kind of drive the business agenda and also even drive policy. So we have a resource center, and therefore information is available on the region. Secondly, we also have information on markets and market trends and basically market information. So therefore, leather stakeholders can be able to go to the platform and get or access market information. This is very critical in facilitating the development of market-led products. As we all know, we are less competitive in the global market space.
Yes.
Just Africa and the region, just as it is in Kenya, we are holding a very small share. At the regional level, the EAC level, we are holding about 0.24 of the 200 billion USD global market for leather and leather products. That is a very small share. Kenya, as it were, we are holding about 0.14% of particular market. And most of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons as to why we are marginal players in the global market is because we are less competitive. Some of the parameters that make us less competitive is quality of our products, but also by virtue of the fact that our products are not market-led. So we intend to provide market information that will facilitate local players to be able to tune their products to respond to market requirement. So we are also connecting them to capacity building institutions,
yes,
so that they may be able, therefore, to enhance their capability to create competitive products.
Pretty much. Beatrice, I'm sorry to cut you short, and I don't mean to, because we were talking about this percentage that you're giving us this morning, that we only account for 0.14% of that global market. Talk to me. I mean, the biggest challenge for the country has not been that we lack the available local material. We do have it. Has the challenge not been finished products that would fit this market? What are you doing about that?
You're correct. In terms of raw material abundance, we're well endowed. Actually, Africa, as it were, we are hosting a quarter of the global livestock population.
Yes.
Kenya is hosting a third of Africa's livestock population. So, in terms of raw material, we're well endowed. But of course, we are very weak in terms of value adding. So leave alone even the quality of products. As it is, the region is exporting 90% of its, produce in the leather industry in form of semi-processed and raw. So basically, we are exporting raw materials. So we are very marginal players in matters finished leather. So now that is the essence of establishing the platform, because most players are dealing in what they know how to, which is basically processing, semi-processed, and dispatching. And we also have EAC countries that have not even excelled in production of semi-processed. Hides and skins as they come from abattoirs and exporting them raw. So meaning really accruing very marginal value out of this. So the platform intends to build the capability of sector players to be able now to move up the value chain, to be able to add value. And that's what we are talking about, capacity building, connecting them to institutions. We have a lot of institutions, but we've been having these disconnects, between those who are looking for information, who intend to learn on how to value add, and those that are providing that kind of capability.
Yes.
So the platform therefore brings together these two spheres, the enablers and those that are seeking to be enabled, so that we can now begin to create value-added products and move away from exporting, raw materials.
Pretty much. Beatrice, let me just get this. You can actually see the type of, the focus that the government is putting on the different sectors. And this one belongs to that critical area, manufacturing, which the government is actually riding on in its Big Four agenda. Would you say we made strides so we can actually have value-added products in this specific industry under the manufacturing sector? Would you say that, well, over the past couple of years, we've made strides? And which ones are those, Beatrice?
What I would say is that first we have the intent, we have the intention to climb the value chain ladder, but we have been very slow.
Yes.
We have a lot of strategic documents speaking to value adding, talking about enhancing manufacturing. But when you go on the ground, the infrastructure to facilitate the SME to better value add is really not there. It's not existing. So there's a lot of talk there. We have a lot of strategic document, but very weak, we are very weak in terms of really putting in place action that will propel value added. So I will still say we are weak, and the value chain is still leaking, in the sense that we are exporting raw materials as opposed to adding value. And as a region and as a country, we are losing out.
Yes.
What I'm calling out for stakeholders to do is to commit to the promise. We have a lot of promises. We've been making a lot of promises, but we need to now take action. We need to stand up and live to our promise and live to our word. So basically what I would say is that, yes, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of intent and plans, but in terms of action, we have taken very little action towards value adding.
What do you think, Beatrice, is the disconnect? Because there looks to be this big focus on the manufacturing sector in the country, but then when we're talking about industries like this that are not really ticking globally and regionally, then we have to look at where the disconnect is. Has the private sector been involved fully?
One of the key reasons why we're having this collective voice, and that's why I'm saying this is an inaugural collective voice, is because we feel like the private sector has been on the periphery of the shaping of the development of the sector's agenda. And we feel like the private sector, especially in matters leather industry, needed to come to the table. We have been very silent players. The policies are being shaped in the absence of the private sector. Discussions are being held on how to advance this sector without, providing a seat for the private sector also to be had. Because you see, as adage goes, as the saying goes, it's the wearer of the shoe who knows where it pinches. So if the private sector is not present, maybe probably this is the reason why some of the solutions that are being provided are not effective. You see, what I would say, if I would take Kenya as an example, sometimes you find, decisions to go for the highest fruit, leaving out with the low-hanging fruit. You see, I want to pick up, typically, one key example locally is the leather pack. It's a good thing in the long run, but it is going to take quite some years before we have the leather pack operationalized.
Yes.
But in the meantime, what is being done in between? 70% of the players in the industry are SMEs. They are looking out for immediate solutions. So if we have nothing and the only thing that we have on the table is, the leather pack that we have been working on for 5 years, and we have maybe probably another 5 years to complete, then we are typically losing 10 years in between of, sitting and waiting. On the side of the private sector, we feel like what we need to be doing at this particular moment, even as we wait for the leather pack to be up and running, we need to be building skills, because the leather will require about 600,000, skilled resource to operationalize it. We need right now to be feeling that, the heat towards ensuring that we have the workforce required to run the leather pack. But on that side, in the private sector, we have a lot of players that are struggling to make ends meet. Go to a place like Karioko, you will find over 200 stalls that are engaged in leather production with thousands, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs or individuals working there. The question here is, how do we assist this kind of entrepreneurs that have already invested in the industry to optimize value out of this particular industry? So I feel like we need to have a multifaceted approach to developing the industry, not just focusing on one project and taking 10 years on one project. We need multifaceted approach to this. And for us, and that's why we are saying, let's come together, and the platform is providing now that platform for entrepreneurs to interact. They will be able to create communities, or their own groups on this particular platform, and they discuss on how they can better now, shape the development agenda of the sector.
Yes. Beatrice, we celebrated when we heard of the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. You like to think that this is what should have pushed any other industry or sector that was not really ticking to start getting ready to trade within Africa, if we can't indeed compete globally. Do you feel that once we fully operationalize this trade area in Africa, that we have a chance now to stamp our footprint in Africa?
Simba, what I would say is that first we celebrated. We are still celebrating.
Yes.
By virtue of the fact that if you look at the Africa as a continent, it provides us a very big market for leather products. For example, the annual demand for footwear in Africa is 880 million. It is marginal of that particular, demand. The East Africa region alone, the demand for footwear is about 128 million, pairs. We are barely scratching on the surface. Come back home in Kenya, demand for leather footwear is 15 million. We are only able to produce 3.5 million. So what am I trying to say? Even as we celebrate demand at continental level, the fact that now that we are one big, huge market,
yes,
as we dance around that, we need to ask ourselves, have we exploited even the local market? Yeah, Kenya, East Africa, and Africa as it were, we are net importers of leather products. So basically the opportunity is there, demand, supersedes supply, same at the regional level and continental level. So even with the coming together of the African economic market, questions, have we organized ourselves so that we can partake of the opportunity? Otherwise, it together of African economies that will not benefit the Africans themselves, that will not benefit the locals themselves. So we, even as we should be to uptake opportunities that emerge.
Beatrice, you can actually see exactly how the government is also trying to push for the local agenda, because that usually a big disconnect as well, that if we are a net importer of leather products, then we should promote the local industry. Case in point, the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative. Do you think that instead of just asking for Kenyans to sort of buy locally, we should have enforcing of this Buy Kenya, Build Kenya initiative, where we can say, well, let's cut the net importation to a certain value so that we can promote the local industry? Do you think that that can work in the short term as we look for the long-term solution?
First, I want to really appreciate it. That was a very good move.
Yes.
First, the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, or Buy East Africa, Build East Africa moves. That is very good and really such a boost to industry. Presidential directive of especially to discipline forces. Big boost. You know, Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, a very meet the quality expect. You know, it can never be forced. It is willing by a willing seller. So as the government provides such a policy, we must build the capability of the manufacturer so that products are suited to the buyer to encourage them. And this is doable because up north, Ethiopia has succeeded in doing it because they put in place the kind of infrastructure that enabled the Ethiopian manufacturer to come up with very competitive products in terms of quality and in terms of price. Now, even if the product is branded made in Ethiopia, it is, people are not buying just by virtue of the fact that it is a local product. People are buying it because it is a competitive product. So on our side, we are actually activating amongst the private sector and hence this particular platform, that even as we receive these opportunities, even as, you know, policies are shaped to support us, we must build capability to be able to create competitive products. So we provide information, we connect the players to enable us in terms of capacity, so that then we can be able to create a product that you wish to have. You know, I've seen people travel and they're able to save, you know, money to be able to afford a Gucci bag. For you, you will want to be able to get that Italian pair of leather shoes. We want to be able to match that quality so that next time you're going out shopping, you're not looking for the Italian pair of shoe, you're looking for a made in East Africa or a made in Kenya pair of shoe.
Pretty much. Beatrice, you are strategically placed there for this morning to actually gauge how far we are. If we continue pushing this narrative for sort of putting these policies in place and actually inventing around these policies, how far are we from changing these numbers, which don't really look that good, the 0.14% share of the global market, when indeed we have a lot of raw materials around? How far are we? Is it possible to put a timeline on it?
I think we are still at the base of the mountain.
Yes.
We have the gear, we have the goodwill, we have the gear, and we are willing to climb. But what I'm saying this morning is that we better start getting up this particular mountain, you know. So I feel like we just need to ensure that we have the right infrastructure in place. You know, until we are able to churn out the required quantities in the quality required and at the right price, we will not be able to compete and uptake the opportunity we have available. I'm calling on financiers to be able to provide affordable financing. I'm calling on government to provide, you know, affordable electricity, so that manufacturers are not and are not suffering under the cost of power. I'm calling on government, especially the Kenyan government, to rethink its revocation of waiving import duty on production inputs, because we do not have support industries.
Yes.
Most of our production inputs are imported. So there is no way our products are going to be competitive if we are importing everything else other than leather that goes into fashioning a leather product. If we don't bring them in duty-free, then we are actually lagging behind from the onset. And then this is the interesting thing. Last year, Kenya and the rest of East Africa lobbied and applied for waiver on import duty, specifically on a number of production inputs. They were granted stay. In 2021, Kenya goes back and revokes that stay. So today, as we are speaking, a Kenyan manufacturer of leather products who is importing production input has to pay duty, whereas their counterparts in East Africa are still enjoying their stay on import duty. So they are not actually paying any import duty on production input. So we need a reliable, stable policy environment. If the policy environment is not stable, you enact a policy today, and then 6 months down the line, you revoke the same, policy, then it becomes a very turbulent environment for investors in the leather industry. So we need to have the kind of infrastructure, a very sound, firm policy environment, and capability among stakeholders to be able to uptake such opportunity and move up and change the numbers. So until we commit to that, the numbers will be, oscillating between where we are and just a few percentages up.
Pretty much, Beatrice, as we come to the end of this conversation, do you feel that, the COVID-19 pandemic has really undone any progress that developing industries or industries were poised to develop really could have achieved? And are you fighting that now as opposed to sort of growing this specific leather industry?
Actually, the COVID pandemic was both positive and negative. Actually, it presents both a positive and negative picture.
Yes.
First, on the negative side is that most of our stakeholders that relied on export market, of course, suffered a hit, especially at the beginning with kind of collapsing of the global supply chain. With travel restrictions. Even goods were affected in terms of, reaching global markets. So for that particular reason, we had especially our tanners that export about over 90%, over 95% of their production is geared towards export. So of course, they suffered much. Most of them were operating at about 30%. There are those that are even completely closed because it did not make economic sense for them to run their manufacturing plants. So, but interestingly, we also had a positive on the side of the micro entrepreneur. Now that you see, with the same collapsing of global supply chains, goods were not easily making their way into Kenya. So now the local consumers found an alternative in the made in Kenya, made in East Africa products. And this was actually evident. You'll find even these people who were initially dealing in second-hand products were now reaching out to locally made, leather products, and business was beginning to boom. So there was both a positive and a negative. But now entrepreneurs that relied on the tourist buyers, tourist market, because of like the gift shops that are located in most of the hotels, of course also suffered a hit because now we did not have enough visitors to support that kind of a market.
Yes.
And then also basically also events, we have very few events, and therefore those that were supplying the events and conferences and such like forums also got a hit. So it is both a positive and a negative, but largely, yes, we were hit by COVID. But I really appreciate the entrepreneurs that started rethinking their business models and, expanding, reaching out. Others, decided to use their facilities to, start thinking about PPEs. How can they be able to even start fashioning personal protective gears and really address the emerging opportunities that were coming out of COVID.
Pretty much. Beatrice Mwasi,
Yeah.
thank you very much for taking your time to speak to us here
Thank
at
you.
Metropol Television.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
We take a short break. Once we
Thank you.
come back, let's talk about why it's important for every other small business to figure out commercial law before you get into business once we come back.